Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. On this very special day, I want to thank the Tanach study and the Asiyah Torah for inviting me to give a little bit of an overview for some of the children and some of the kids on Shiva Asar BeTamuz. Can I get a thumbs up if you hear me? Okay, great. So as you know, today is Shiva Asar BeTamuz. And one of the important messages and reasons for why we are commemorating or celebrating or talking about this day of Shiva Asar BeTamuz, I want to start with an example of a story of a friend of mine. Came over to play baseball one day. We were playing in the yard, and he was pitching and I was hitting, and he was pitching and I was hitting, and then we took turns, and then I was pitching and he was hitting, and I was pitching and he was hitting. And then before you know it, I got a great pitch to him, and he right down, we called it a little meatball. He swung on it, and he whacked that ball so hard, it landed in our neighbor's window. Now, our neighbor was not very happy, and unfortunately, we broke his window. Now, there are a couple of things that we needed to do at that point. And today, we're going to talk about all the broken windows that maybe we left and didn't fix. Because the next day, my neighbor came knocking on the door, and he said, "Hey, I found the baseball through my window, and my window is all cracked, and somebody needs to fix it. Does anybody want to tell me about what happened?" So that's just one example. We're going to come back to this example in a minute. Another example is about not my friend, but my nephew's friend, who said, "I want to borrow a bicycle. Do you mind if I borrow your bicycle?" He says, "Sure, no problem. Just make sure you wear a helmet. And when you finish riding, please, if you can, return the bicycle." Well, friend went riding on the bicycle, and unfortunately, the bike broke down. He got a flat tire, or the wheel started coming off, or the chain fell off. Now, sometimes when things go wrong, we have an opportunity right away to fix it, and sometimes it takes us a little while to turn and fix it. Shiva Asar BeTamuz today is one of those days where we have some things that are broken, and the rabbi said today's a good day to think about all the things that are broken. So these are just two examples: a broken window from playing baseball, or maybe breaking your friend's bicycle, but we'll talk about some other examples about what we need to do on today's date. So the way that it works is, well, we're going to go through a couple of different examples or specific details about today's holiday, Shiva Asar BeTamuz, and we'll be able to pull out and think about what it means for our lives. So before we start with Shiva Asar BeTamuz, let's first explain what Shiva Asar means. Shiva Asar is a number. You may recognize the number 7 in Shiva Asar and Eser. So it's the 17th day of the month of Tammuz. So what is the actual day of Shiva Asar BeTamuz? Let me get this. The actual day is the 17th day Yod Zayin BeTamuz. That is the date on our calendar. And now, what are we not allowed to do? Did we lose it? Mosey, can you give me a thumbs up if you see the animation coming up slowly? Okay, great. So the date of Shiva Asar BeTamuz, the 17th day of Tammuz, what are we not allowed to do, or what do we do on Shiva Asar BeTamuz? And this is really only for adults. But adults are not allowed to eat on this day. Children are allowed to eat on this day, but adults are fasting. Now, what happens to your body when you can't eat? When you can't eat, your body starts to get tired. You start to feel weak. And when you're feeling weak and you're feeling tired, your body tells you, hey, we're very weak. We're very tired. You need to go eat something. But what the rabbis instructed us on this special day, they said, you know, we want to remind everybody that there's something that they're supposed to be doing. There is some work that they should be thinking about. There are some things in their lives that may be broken, and we don't want to have anybody eating on this day so that they can think about all the different things that are wrong. So adults, they don't fast. I'm sorry, children, they don't fast. But adults are fasting today, and they're thinking about all these different examples of things that we spoke about. And I want to show you guys and tell you a little bit about a special man who lived about close to 900 years ago. His name was Rav Moshe Bar Maimon. Rav Moshe Bar Maimon was one of the most famous, popular, influential, important rabbis of the Sephardim. He lived in Sepharad in Spain. He was born in Cordoba, Spain, in the year 1135, about close to 900 years ago, 885 years ago. And his name, Moshe ben Maimon, we call him Rambam, Rav Moshe Bar Maimon. We took an acronym, we gave him an abbreviation of his name, and we gave him a nickname. And when he was a young boy, about the age of 10, 11, 12 years old, in the town of Cordoba, where he lived in Spain, there were new rulers coming to town, and they made it very, very difficult for the Jewish people to live there. So they said, either you're going to convert to Islam, you're going to be Muslims with us, or you need to leave. So Harambam's family, his entire family, and a lot of the Jewish people at that time started running away from Spain. And in Spain, at the time, there were so many Jews, and they were flourishing, and they were writing poetry, and they were writing music, and they were writing Pirushim on the Torah, and they were great Hachamim. So Harambam and his family first, they go, they flee, they run away to Morocco. And then when it gets a little difficult in Morocco, they run all the way to Israel. But at the time, Israel was not an easy place to live. There wasn't a lot of food. There wasn't a lot of work. So it ends up being that Harambam goes to Egypt with his family, and he lives there for many years, and he becomes the personal doctor for the Sultan, and he becomes a very important figure. And this is about his life in general. But what Harambam did that was so influential and so impactful, something so important that even today we read what he wrote, he was able to simply write all the halachot of how to live a good Jewish life. I have a couple of his books right here in front of me. And in his books, he writes, he organizes all the different topics, all the different laws from Shabbat to the Chagim and the holidays, to halachot of tzedakah and hilchot teshubah. He puts everything in order, and he gives very simple halachot. Now, when it comes to the halachot of ta'aniyot, of fast days, he says something very interesting, and we're going to look at his words, even though he wrote them close to 900 years ago, or maybe even, I would say maybe 910 or 910 years ago, or I'm sorry, I'm counting the wrong way, 850, close to 850 than 900 years ago. They're still very applicable. They apply to us today. And when he's describing the ta'aniyot, the fast days, he gives us a beautiful example. He says, Yesh sham yamim. Can you see that, or it got cut off a little? I'm sorry if it got cut off. He says, Yesh sham yamim. There are some days, shekol Yisrael mit'anim bahem. Everybody in Yisrael, that means every member of Yisrael, everybody who considers themselves what we today call Jewish, all members of Yisrael, They fast on those days. And why are they fasting? Mipene hasarot she'eru bahem. Because on those days, some bad tragedies happened. Some things got broken. Like the example we have with the baseball, or the example with the bicycle. But imagine something bad happens to the whole nation of Israel. So sometimes some bad things will happen to all the members of Israel. And when that happens, the rabbis say, we can't just let this day pass us by and not do anything about it. Even if it happened a long time ago, it's something we need to think about. And we need to open up the ways of teshubah. We need to start thinking how we can be better people and fix the mistakes or the accidents or the things that were broken a long time ago. And he takes it one step further. He says, it should all be a zikaron lema'asenu. It should remind us of how we act. And sometimes our ma'asim are ma'asim ra'im. He says sometimes when we do things, we don't necessarily do the best stuff. Sometimes everybody here has ma'asim ra'im. And if it's not only ours, it could be ma'aseh avotenu. It could be how our dads or the people before us acted that are just like ours today. So what he's meaning to say is that when bad things happen to Am Yisrael, we sort of mark the calendar and say, on this day, something bad happened, and I need to learn from that day. And I need to correct it, even if it wasn't me who was there when it happened, and it was only my parents and great-parents and great-great-great-great-great-great-parents. I still have that issue today, and I need to deal with it. I still have a broken bicycle, and I need to fix it. So we're going to go through some examples of some of the things that happened from the beginning of when Bnei Israel just became a nation. We know that Bnei Israel, they were promised Eretz Canaan to Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, our avot, are promised Eretz Canaan and a big nation by Hashem. But Hashem says, but they're going to have to go to Egypt. They're going to have to go to Mitzrayim. And there they're going to be avadim. They're going to be slaves in Egypt until Hashem is going to take Bnei Israel out of Mitzrayim and he's going to bring them to Eretz Canaan. But on the way between Eretz Mitzrayim and Eretz Canaan, Hashem takes Bnei Israel through the Midbar, through the desert. And 50 days after leaving Mitzrayim, Bnei Israel, the whole nation of Israel, come to Matan Torah, the Har Sinai. They come to Har Sinai, and there Hashem reveals himself and speaks to everybody and gives the Torah to Moshe and to Bnei Israel. But Moshe had to go back to Har Sinai and to study and learn the Torah and hear it from Hashem. And in the meantime, unfortunately, Bnei Israel, at the time when Moshe goes up to get the Torah from Har Sinai and get the explanation of it, and he comes down with these two special luchot habrit, the special tablets where Hashem wrote the 10 commandments on these luchot. Moshe has this special prize. He comes down from Har Sinai, and he sees Bnei Israel are singing and dancing, but they're not singing and dancing and saying, oh, Hashem is the best, and he saved us, and he brought us out of Mitzrayim, and he gave us the Torah. They're singing and dancing around an Egel Zahav, a golden calf. Bnei Israel starts singing and dancing around a piece of gold that they made into a shape of a sheep. And they say, Elo Elohecha Yisrael, that's our Shem. That's our God that took us out of Mitzrayim. And when Moshe sees this, he can't believe it. He takes the luchot that he has in his hands and he breaks them in front of everybody. And that's what this painting, this is a very famous painting that shows the story of Moshe breaking the luchot. Do you see Moshe breaking the luchot? I'll put a little arrow here. Moshe with the luchot coming down from the mountain, and he breaks the luchot. Our rabbis teach us that this day that Moshe came down and broke the luchot, and everything needed to change for Bnei Israel, was Shiv'ah Asar BeTamuz, the day that we're talking about today. So that's just one example. We have to talk about another example. Our rabbis say that there were actually 5 different tragedies or very bad occasions that happened to Bnei Israel on this day. The first one we just mentioned was when Bnei Israel were in the Midbar, they were in the desert at Har Sinai, where they just received the Torah 40 days ago, and yet they went to do Avodah Zarah, and they're dancing and they're singing around it, and Moshe comes down and he breaks the most precious prize you could imagine that Hashem gave him for Bnei Israel. Moshe says the people are not ready for this, and he breaks it. The next occasion that happens on this day, I will tell you one of the last ones that happened that the rabbis say, this is a terrible day and we can't forget it. I want to fast forward in history to the times of the second Bet HaMikdash, close to 2,000 years ago. At the time, unfortunately, there was a terrible enemy surrounding Yerushalayim. The Roman Empire came to lay siege around Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim has a lot of hills and a walled city around it, as you can see in the painting here. And you can see the Roman army that is all lined up and preparing for battle to come into Yerushalayim. And the way that their strategy for the war would be to surround the city, create what we call a siege. And when you surround the city, you have soldiers right outside the gates and around the entire wall. And you don't let any people in or out. And you don't let any food or medicine in or out of the city. And the purpose of the siege, of surrounding the city, is to weaken the people inside. So inside the city of Yerushalayim were all the Jewish people. And if you can see here, this building, this is the Bet HaMikdash, where Bnei Israel would serve and pray and bring korbanot to Hashem. And the Romans were circling and encamping around Yerushalayim for a very, very, very long time, until the point where the Jewish people were so weak on the inside, they couldn't protect themselves anymore. They were so weak and they had not enough food to stay strong. They didn't have enough ammunition or supplies to defend themselves. And on this day, the Roman people broke the walls surrounding Yerushalayim, and unfortunately started a terrible attack on Am Yisrael, on the people, on the Jewish nation, specifically in Yerushalayim, until 3 weeks later, will be in 3 weeks from now, we'll talk about another day, on Tisha B'Av, where they actually destroy and burn down the Bet HaMikdash. So the rabbis told us, write down this day. This isn't a day that we can forget easily. This is a day of terrible tragedy, but it can't just be a day that we're going to just think about and remember and say, oh, that's what today is for. We have to use this day to think about all the things that we have broken, or all the things that we're not doing right, or all the things and areas that we can do a little bit better. And just like Harambam was saying, that the purpose of the day would be to help us and think about all the ways that we can do teshuvah. We can make a better life. We can do it better for ourselves. So today's avodah, the work that we have to do today, is very much like that story of playing baseball and breaking somebody's window. How is it like that? Well, you have an opportunity to correct the mistakes or fix what's broken. And it's not just sometimes things that break. It's not just sometimes, oh, I broke my friend's bicycle, or I broke a window, or I broke my friend's toy and I need to fix it. Sometimes it could be how I'm treating other people. Sometimes it could be how I behave with my siblings, my brothers and my sisters, or my friends, or even my parents or grandparents. It's not always about the physical things that are broken, like a wall that gets broken or a window that gets broken. Sometimes it's feelings that can get broken or hurt. And today's a day that the rabbis tell us we need to work on ourselves. We need to fix the different things that we have that don't work for us. Maybe there are ways that I can speak nicer to people. Or maybe there are examples where I could be more kind. I have opportunities to be nicer to my friends, to my family, to other people in my group, other people in my class. All these ways that I live on in an everyday life, our rabbis are telling us today's a day where you need to take a break. You need to pause everything. And if you're old enough, you can't even eat. You have to focus only on how am I behaving? How's my behavior? What's not right? What can I do better? What went wrong? And we learn from the different examples of how Bnei Israel made mistakes on a national level. Let's say they made mistakes, the whole nation at once. Sometimes there's also mistakes that happen between two people, or sometimes even one person. Sometimes we can say, I'm not in the mood to wake up and pray today. I want to stay in bed and I want to sleep late. Why do I have to log on to Tefillah and pray? Plug. Why do I have to wake up and put my seat on? And why do I have to be nice to I just want to lay on the couch and sit down and not bother anybody. Today's a day where we can think about what can I do better in my own life? Not just how I can behave with other people, but sometimes even with ourselves. What can we do better? Do I really focus and try when I'm doing a mitzvah? Am I paying attention when mom or dad are saying Kiddush Friday night? Am I paying attention? Am I thinking about when I put $1 in the tzedakah or put some coins in the pushka for the tzedakah? Am I thinking how I'm helping people? And our rabbis tell us that today's work, the work that we have to do today, whether you're eating or not eating, is to think about how can I do things better? How can I fix some of the mistakes that I made? And if it's not fixing some of the mistakes that I made, how can I prevent myself? How can I stop myself from making those mistakes again? So, a good tip and some good advice for everybody that's listening today. If there's something that you can think about that you know is broken or not working, or you upset somebody, or you hurt your friend's feelings, or you hurt your brother's feelings, today's a day you should really think about it and say, how would I feel if they did that to me? How would I feel if somebody broke my bicycle? How would I feel if somebody was pulling my hair or fighting with me or teasing me? And it's a day that we can correct it. So you could pick up the phone or you could FaceTime them and you could say, hey, I was thinking about this and it wasn't really nice the way that I treated you last week, or it wasn't really nice the way I was speaking to you, or it wasn't nice of me not to give you a turn to ride when it was your turn to ride. Today's the day our Chachamim, our rabbis teach us that we need to think about all the different ways that we act. And sometimes the ways that we act are appropriate and correct, and sometimes they're not. And when they're not, we need to really correct them and fix them. So everybody here, everybody in the world has different mistakes that they make. Nobody's perfect. But if you don't take a couple minutes or a couple of days and think about, hey, what am I doing wrong? How can I do things better? They're not going to get better. So we have to think about what we did wrong. We have to think about our behaviors and our actions. And today's the day that the rabbis say, stop everything and start to fix it. Start to correct it. And I want to wish everybody an easy time to think about it. Take some time today to think about some of the things you could correct. Take some time to think about maybe some people's feelings that you hurt. It could be your friends, it could be your family, it could be anybody. And pick up the phone and give them a call, or think about it. You don't have to necessarily do it today, but it should be something that we think about. Maybe our parents, our grandparents, our friends, our family, the mailman, could be anybody that you don't maybe treat nicely, speak nicely, think nicely. Today's the day we could think about, how can I do it better? And that's what the rabbis really said. That's what their whole goal was. He says, we can't let these days come and pass us and we don't fix the things that we need to fix. So we're going to have days on the calendar that we're going to remind ourselves and say, you need to fix these things. And now, today, Shiva Asar BeTamuz is just one example of that day, of those days where we need to go out and fix things. So I want to thank everybody for joining. If you had some questions, we could take a couple questions.